Welcome to this channel to hear a new information, story, autography, news and biography. Today I want to tell you a biography of Adolf Hitler. Listen up to the end to hear amazing event. Who is Adolf Hitler? Do you know Adolf Hitler? Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in the border town of Braunau am in Austria-Hungary. His father, Alois Hitler, was a mid-level customs official known for his authoritarian temperament and rigid discipline, while his mother, Clara Hitler, was nurturing, patient, and deeply protective of her son. Hitler's early family life was marked by tension, fear of punishment, and emotional imbalance, especially due to his father's frequent outbursts and strict expectations. These early experiences contributed to Hitler's later obsession with authority, obedience, and control. As a child and teenager, Hitler struggled in school and performed poorly in structured academic environments. He showed little interest in mathematics or science but demonstrated a strong fascination with art, architecture, and German history. Hitler dreamed of becoming a great artist, imagining a future of creative recognition. His failure to meet educational expectations caused repeated conflicts with his father, whose death in 1903 removed both an obstacle and a stabilizing force from Hitler's life. In 1907, Hitler moved to Vienna to pursue admission to the Academy of Fine Arts. Believing artistic success would validate his identity, he failed the entrance exam, primarily due to weak drawing skills, and failed again the following year. These rejections deeply humiliated him and intensified feelings of resentment, inadequacy, and anger toward perceived elites and institutions that he believed had unjustly denied him recognition. Between 1908 and 1913, Hitler lived in extreme poverty in Vienna, often staying in homeless shelters and surviving by selling small paintings. During this period, he spent much of his time reading nationalist newspapers and political pamphlets. Vienna's political environment was charged with ethnic tension, populism, and anti-Semitic rhetoric, which profoundly influenced Hitler's developing worldview. It was in Vienna that Hitler began to form rigid ideological beliefs rooted in racism, anti-Semitism, and conspiracy thinking. He increasingly blamed Jews, socialists, and intellectual elites for economic hardship and social instability, rather than seeing his struggles as personal or structural. Hitler adopted a worldview that explained failure through scapegoating, a psychological pattern that would later define his political strategy. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, partly to escape Austrian military service and partly because of his admiration for German nationalism. When World War I broke out in 1914, he eagerly volunteered for the German army. The war provided him with a sense of purpose, belonging, and discipline that he had never experienced before. Hitler served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, a dangerous role that exposed him to constant combat. He was wounded twice and temporarily blinded by a gas attack near the end of the war. He received the Iron Cross for bravery, an honor he wore with pride. The defeat of Germany in 1918 shattered his identity and reinforced his belief that Germany had been betrayed by internal enemies. After the war, Hitler remained connected to the military and worked as a political informant. In 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist group. His intense speaking style, emotional delivery, and ability to channel public anger quickly made him the party's most effective propagandist. He soon assumed leadership and reshaped the party into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party. Hitler's ideology fused extreme nationalism, racial hierarchy, anti-Semitism, and authoritarianism. He rejected democracy, individual rights, and pluralism, promoting instead a vision of a racially pure state led by a single, unquestioned leader. These beliefs drew on existing extremist ideas but were amplified by Hitler's charisma and relentless propaganda. In 1923, Hitler attempted to overthrow the Bavarian government in the failed beer hall putsch. The coup collapsed quickly, and Hitler was arrested and tried for treason. During his imprisonment, he wrote Mein Kampf, a manifesto outlining his hatred of Jews, his desire for territorial expansion, and his belief in violent struggle as a political tool. After his release from prison, Hitler concluded that power must be achieved legally rather than by force. Throughout the late 1920s, the Nazi Party remained relatively small. However, the economic devastation caused by the Great Depression created widespread unemployment, fear, and desperation conditions Hitler exploited with ruthless effectiveness. Through mass rallies, emotional speeches, and propaganda, Hitler presented himself as a savior who would restore national pride and economic stability. In January 1933, he was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he dismantled democratic institutions, suspended civil liberties, and established a dictatorship through intimidation and legal manipulation. Hitler consolidated power by eliminating rivals, banning political opposition, and centralizing authority. The Gestapo and SS enforced loyalty through terror, while concentration camps were established to imprison political opponents. German society was transformed into a totalitarian system where dissent was punishable and obedience was mandatory. Central to Hitler's regime was systematic racial persecution. Jews were stripped of citizenship, barred from professions, and subjected to constant humiliation and violence. These policies escalated into the Holocaust, the industrialized genocide of 6 million Jews, along with millions of Roma, disabled individuals, political prisoners, and others deemed undesirable. Hitler's foreign policy was driven by the concept of Lebensraum, or living space, which justified expansion and conquest. He annexed Austria, dismantled Czechoslovakia, and invaded Poland in 1939, triggering World War II. These actions were rooted in racial ideology rather than strategic necessity. Early military successes reinforced Hitler's belief in his own infallibility. He increasingly ignored military advisors and made reckless strategic decisions. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 proved catastrophic, opening a massive front that drained Germany's resources and manpower. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler became isolated, paranoid, and detached from reality. He blamed generals, civilians, and imaginary conspiracies for failures. Bombing raids devastated German cities, and millions of civilians suffered as the regime refused to acknowledge defeat. Even when Germany's collapse was inevitable, Hitler rejected surrender. He believed the German people had failed him and deserved destruction. This nihilistic outlook resulted in unnecessary loss of life during the war's final months. On April 30, 1945, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his underground bunker shortly after marrying Eva Braun. His death symbolized the total collapse of the Nazi regime and the catastrophic consequences of his rule. Adolf Hitler's legacy is one of mass murder, destruction, and moral failure. His life illustrates how economic despair, propaganda, and unchecked hatred can enable extremist leaders to seize power. Studying his biography is essential not to glorify him, but to understand the dangers of intolerance, authoritarianism, and the erosion of democratic values.